The rules of the games have changed. Expansion of OTT platforms, especially streaming services based on subscription, have completely changed the way for success. The lack of regulations, the lack of transparency, and very limited accessibility put creatives and smaller players at a disadvantage. Of course, there are companies that measure viewership and engagement on the platform, as well as engagement and demand outside of it. But without standardized measurement system, we will never come to an agreement which data matters and what is done properly. So let's talk about this. My name is Pola Hempowicz. I've been a TV executive for the past 15 years. I run TV networks, launched and managed streaming platforms. And now I educate producers, writers, and actors on the power of data, how to find it, how to understand it, and how to leverage it in negotiations with streaming platforms. And today, I have a great pleasure of speaking with Remi Tereszkiewicz, a former VP of sales at Warner Brothers, and a current CEO of Betaseries. Hi, Remi.
Hello. Very honored to be with you today in this conversation in PIKE, so dziękuję bardzo.
It's a pleasure. Tell us more about Betaseries and how you fit into the landscape.
Right. So Betaseries has been founded years ago when people were looking for these series that now are watched by everybody, but at that time you had only some fans sharing this. That was 10 years ago. Since that, Betaseries has become a media doing recommendation for people so that they can find their next favorite TV series. There are so many platforms that people need a tool, need a good recommendation to find their next show. Most of them complain that they lose so much time, more than 30 minutes for half of them to find their next show. So Betaseries, it's a media, web, application, a radio, podcast, and we develop a lot of tools like alerts, notifications, so that a series you liked 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there is a new season, there is something similar right now. So we help you really to drive your attention on what you like, and you can share that with the others. So that's the platform we do, and we realized that by having all the tastes and the viewings of people that they share with us, we have a unique source of data, of information that helps us to understand where are the trends, who is watching what. So we have developed a set of tools of data insights to help producers, commissioners to better drive this business with data that is important, but that is not commonly spread. So we bring this data to help the industry.
So how can we use Betaseries data to improve decision-making process?
So it's very simple because we are, you mentioned audience measurement. We are not really doing this kind of global audience measurement systems. There are Nielsen's and Barb and Mediametry, many companies also online developing solutions these days. They remain, I would say, at this level of understanding what is big, what is working, giving top 10s, these kind of things. Whereas we are a lot more into details about a series, how does it catch attention, does it work, does it retain people, all these kind of things. So our data is composed of a set of, I would say, different insights. For instance, the performance, how can we detail and compare the performance of a series so that the producer knows if his series has worked or not. The target, on which genre is it? Is this genre growing or not? On which platform is this genre most demanded? And so on and so on. So progressively, we have all the necessary information that helps creators, commissioners, to develop the right content and to pinpoint the right audience for it.
So whose problems you're solving the most?
So, in fact, there are several, there is a life cycle in a product. And a series is somehow a product. And we concentrate on series because they represent more than 70% of what is being watched on SVOD platforms. It's a lot. And a TV series is a unique content because it has two big advantages. First, it can be exclusive for platforms. I think we'll talk about that later a bit more in detail. It can be exclusive. So when you buy a movie, it has been in theater already. When you make your own original, you can say, I'm the only one to have it, you can attract people. So a TV series has a strong power to attract people. And a TV series, by construction, is a series. It means episodes, seasons, people come 1 week after, months after, years after. So all these two elements, to attract people and to keep people, are in fact what are looking for in the platforms, in the television, is to attract the audience and to keep them. So TV series is unique for that. So we help, in fact, this industry at two levels. First, during creation, when you develop a new series, we identify clearly the unique selling points of the project so that the producer can go and sell it. Because before a series is shot, before it's produced, you need to sell it. And it's very difficult because now you have a lot of ambition, you want to sell to international platforms, national televisions, when they set up also their own platforms, they are in competition themselves with these big players. So you need to be precise about your audience because each series has one segment. Each series belongs to one category of viewers. It's not anymore this time where you are doing a big mainstream show. So we help producers, showrunners to identify to which audience they address their content, to identify also their own competition. Did somebody do this series before, same kind of stories? Did it work or not? Should I really do it if somebody did that before? How is it different? So we help them to position and to define the material and then the sales material to position the series before they are doing their artistic pitch, because then it's in their hands, then it's about art. But before that, you position, and then the door is open at platforms because you come to them knowing their audience, knowing their needs. And the second momentum where we help is when it is launched, when it is sold, when it is existing, then we can help in identifying the right media tools, the right communication, what is working more or less, so that we bring more efficiency in the way they are promoted and in the way they catch their audiences.
Let's go back to the first point that you said, because I think that sometimes the pitch and positioning of an idea is different when you speak to executives at platforms, decision making people, and also when you have strictly audience in mind. So would you say there is a difference in preparation? Would you say that you focus more to get those creatives through the door and then help them develop the best show? Or is it to have, based on the data that you possess, to create a pitch that will just answer the demands of the audience?
So, to pitch on the artistical level, it is really their job, it is their idea, it is their expertise. But before that, you need to have the door open, you know, to the platforms. And the platforms, they have, in fact, an audience that is not one single segment. It's a composition of several, you know, groups of people. It's very segmented. We are really in this digital world. I give you an example. In Disney Plus, they have acquired the Star Wars fan plus the Marvel's fans, plus ABC shows and so on. So it's young women, elder men, and when you go into details, you have so many groups of interest. So when you come up with a new project, it's good to position it, to know to whom it will speak, so that it will reassure the platform, I mean your commissioner, that you know what you're talking about, you know that you bring to them a valuable, you know, content that will help them either to bring a new audience or to keep their audience and satisfy them. So we prepare all this job for the creators, for producers, by identifying comparables. You mentioned I worked before for Warner Brothers. In the studios, you spend your time finding comparables in movies. That's what we do for TV series, for TV material. And as we have the data for these comparables, we know how they performed, we know who watched them, we know there is still some interest on them, if they are on the growing genre or not. All these elements. We know also the kind of casting that worked on it. It's a brand new feature we have. So we package this in a, I would say, marketing pitch material that the producer and the showrunner can integrate into their presentation of the project, so that it's immediately, you know, catching attention at the commissioner because it's speaking to them.
Right. Okay, I'm glad that we're focusing on creators and empowering them. I think the recent events with the writer strike in the US, thankfully being now over, but the actor strike still ongoing. So how can we, Betaseries and other companies that work with data, really strengthen the position of creators and help them achieve I don't want to say success, because as I said at the beginning, I think it's really hard to define success with streaming and online content distribution. But how can we make their position stronger?
So, as you mentioned, the world has changed a lot in a few years. We have switched now to this OTT world, mostly SVOD, but AVOD is growing, and we are going to have such an evolution of the TV business. I would call it a revolution. Now we got more than 50% of all video watched that are non-linear. So these videos are really for one group of people that will watch it in a different kind of usage. We need to understand all these new sets of behaviors to develop the right elements in the material, in the content, to address the audience. I'm not coming back to this point, but for writers, what is important to pass as a message is to say that now the world is theirs. It's not only selling to one TV, it's developing one IP. It's developing a very strong product, I would say, that they can sell not only to one TV, but maybe to the world. The world is theirs. So if we find the right segments of people interested by their story, by their character, they can really embrace the niche of their story in their country, but in many others, they can make a big hit. So I think, in a way, the data will help them to really identify the inner power of their story and how far they can go into the expansion of their story progressively, maybe in a franchise, in a multi-seasonal show that will be much above, you know, the kind of series that people watch, that will be a brand. And everybody aims at that, developing franchises, brands, and characters that everybody will know in the streets, you know. So that's the kind of power we can bring thanks to data.
But I keep thinking to the challenge that's feels like an opportunity, but sometimes it's both. And I mean the word that is so overused by those international media companies, which is think glocal. So Glocality, which is the global appeal of a local story. Now, it's very tempting to come up with the idea of a series or a show or a program when you jump into the idea, okay, this is going to be a global success. But I think the beauty comes from finding a local story that just resonates because of the humanity of the story. So how to avoid, or how to not fall into that trap, in your opinion, of thinking, okay, I have a global success, rather than I have a good story, quality pitch, then we can think about franchising, then we can think about global distribution. Yeah,
the dream is franchise and so on, of course. But first, it's a story, it's a good story, good characters. If it doesn't work locally, it will not work abroad. So it should be the best possible, of course. What we can do with all these data is to help to expand it. I mean, to have an international show, yes. But before going international, it should be a good success locally. It should work so well that you feel you got in your hands, you know, a show that can travel. So let's not miss the point. Data is not there to transform any kind of series into an international success. Data is to help doing this, but if the story is not there, if the potential is not there, and then it's a creative, it is in their hands. If the idea is not, fitting a real need that is in the air today, if the characters are not having the problems shared with people, then we cannot help. So it's in the writer's hands, but then they should concern a lot about trends, about society. Because if we take some statistics we made in Europe, but also in Poland, people are considering TV series as unique to be entertained. You have a lot of fun watching TV series, but also to learn about the world, to be more engaged in your society. What we call impact series, are more and more in people's mind important to understand, because it's really a new media that is shared and many people watch them, So I think that you can have, as a writer, recipes to make it work, but you should also have a vision on society, on what people lack, on how to bring people to the next level in terms of, comprehension of their worlds. And the artistic, the artistic world helps a lot to package that. But if people are elevated at the end, that's unique, and TV series can do that.
We're cusping on the edge of marketing and KPIs, but just because you work before in sales, so you have a pretty good overview, or you had a really deep insights into how shows travel. I come from, or my background is also in Comedy Central, and the subject of comedy, whether it travels or not, keep coming back almost like a boomerang. So what do you think? Does comedy travel?
So if we analyze all the genres, between platforms and television, the biggest genres don't change that much. The biggest genres are for platforms also, not only for television. It's drama, crime, thriller, and comedy. Of course, we have in mind the fantasy shows, the science fiction shows, horror shows from platforms, but it's maybe sometimes their biggest hits, but it's not the biggest share of usage. It's all about the thriller, crime, drama, and comedy. So comedy is very, very important. When it works, it makes a big hit. Look at comedies like, The Big Bang Theory, or these kind of shows that everybody speaks about. But you have a lot of comedies that don't work for one that succeeds. So comedy is necessary for a platform to acquire. Comedy is a very difficult genre. And usually when you use codes, dialogue codes, it has a difficulty to travel. But if you crack that, if you manage to make something more, universal, then it's probably the best way to have a success, because comedy is really a key driver in that. I take the example of Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is surprising because it's about football. It's in the UK, and so you're like, will people like it? Women adore that. Everybody who tries the series stays and adore the characters. It's a very subtle, tone. So it's a new proposition. It has worked, and it's traveling everywhere. And thanks to that, maybe the only platform being really having a big success in comedy in summer, it was Apple with Ted Lasso. So yeah, it's very important as a genre, but it's one of the most difficult. And traditional television, linear television, know that.
Yeah, but I think we could have a separate panel on Ted Lasso, because I have so much to say on the topic. But I think that Ted Lasso also, other than being phenomenal first and second season, I have my doubts about the third one. But I think when it comes to Ted Lasso, a little side note, the timing of the premiere was just perfection, because it was the middle of the pandemic. We all needed some sunshine. We all needed a connection to another human being, and the kindness, the empathy that shines from the show. I think this was just what we needed at that time. I'm not sure if this would have turned into such a massive hit. I think it's if it premiered during a regular non-pandemic times, but that's another.
But then the importance of marketing, because the show is there,
Yeah.
how to sell it with the right messages at the right momentum. It's again about how to market it, you know.
Thank you for a perfect segue into the conversation on marketing and KPIs. So we said that the landscape has changed for distribution and for making a connection with the audiences. I think building the relationship, positioning the content, it's on the shoulders, lays on the shoulders of the marketing teams. Now, what has changed in that department? What KPIs are now different? What is the most important metric? What is the most important angle to approach the getting a message out there?
So there are different, I would say there are different elements to take into consideration. First, I mean, if you take what we do on Betaseries, we speak about a series, and if it drives interest, people say plus in the system, they say, I want to be updated about that. Then people, if they start to watch, they say, oh, I watched episode 1. And if they go to the end, they say, yeah, I finished episode 8, I'm waiting for next season. So in these 3 different moments, you know, you have different KPIs. The first moment is to drive interest. So the question is the subject really resonating with what we have identified in our audiences? Is the IP, you know, maybe a driver for already an interest, a community? Is it a book or a video game, or you know, The Witcher? If I take this example, it's not coming from nowhere. So the potential of the story, the potential of sometimes what we call the packaging, either, I mean, talents already attached to that. So that's something that is taken into consideration. Then people getting started and starting to watch and going to the end, it's more in the hands of the creative to develop narratives on characters, on the story, that makes people start but continue. And we lose a lot of people in the first episode, you know. We lose more than 30% of people in the first 5 minutes. So I would say that the entry in the show is very important, and the call to action from episode 1 to 2, 2 to 3, those are very important. And then at the end, the final climax, so that you give to the people, you know, the envy if there is a second season, to wait for the other. That will be really very important. It doesn't to be, you know, very basic call to action, like you know, the hero is just falling and no, but it should be done in a subtle manner so that it drives really interest, and it's so engaging people that they will be there for next week if it is a weekly show, or for next season if you binge it all. So I think that marketers, they look at the potential on which audience. If it's a huge potential on a tiny audience, it's better to be a big platform that can do that internationally. And then the capacity of the story, of the content itself, to drive people from the beginning to the end with a specific attention in the very first minute and first episodes, and at the very end also.
You've mentioned, I think, one of the key metrics that matter right now, which is completion rate. So how many people actually, or what the percentage of people who started watching the show actually finished it. And it seems to matter to everybody, to the marketeers, but most importantly, I feel like platforms make decision whether to go into next seasons based on that particular metric. And I think one of the examples is a very famous case on Netflix, which is 1899, a German show which is, I think, the most watched German show outside of Germany. Yeah. And produced by the team behind super successful Dark. And it felt like it was 100%, it ended on a massive cliffhanger. So it felt, of course they're gonna move into second season. And yet it stopped, it was canceled. And it turned out the completion rate was around 30%, which is a very low number for a show that costed, I think, what was it, over $60 million to produce the season 1. So yeah, and so how do you think is representative of what your users declare, whether they finish or not? How does it translate into like a bigger picture?
So you mentioned this show, and I have also some others in my mind. Regularly, if a show is not, so first of all, there is a trend to have miniseries, so shows that are just single seasons, and it has to work in one season, and that's it. But for shows having this kind of multi-seasonal stories, there is this churn, the capacity of people to leave the show, and that is taken into account. But there are also many other criteria. Is the show big enough in terms of global audience that can justify my production costs? It's not only bringing people to the end. It's bringing enough people when it is a costly show. That is maybe what happened to this German show. It may be sometimes also to do with, and we read a lot of interviews about that. Is season 2 as good as season 1? Really? Because if you go to the next level and then you lose people, overall it's a disaster. So I think it's not that simple. It's not only the churn. The number of people leaving the show that is important. It's a set of elements. But of course, we measure that for all the shows, and regularly it's correlated. When people go more than the average to the end, there is a season 2.
You mentioned a very scary and a dirty word starting with the letter C, churn.
The churn,
of course, which is the biggest threat right now for the platforms.
Yeah.
So, what the platforms need in order to minimize churn, in your opinion?
So they need to identify precisely who their audiences are and what they are looking for, so that they don't lose them. Because if you are spending more than 30 minutes on on your favorite platform and you don't find a show at the end, one time, two times, the third time you will leave, you will unsubscribe, because in this new world there is no engagement. People can leave in a month, once they have finished a show. So for the platforms is to be able to be sure that all what they buy, all their co-productions, their purchases, do match their audience's needs. So what they need is to find the shows, and they need to have producers educated with this, knowing what is this kind of audience segmentation, knowing how to keep people. So I think it has to do with these new metrics. It's not only the big audience, it's understanding the segmentation, the fact it is changing over time, genre is changing over time, the interest for a genre, and building a show that in its fundamentals, story, characters, is engaging so much that people will be there to the end. And then the platform is happy with that. So I think it has to do with also more relations data-driven to start between platforms and producers, and that's the way for success.
I've also learned recently on a metric called Reactivation Index, which I think is a complete game changer. It's the metric that shows that your show was the first one, or one of the, or among the first ones that inactive subscriber or a subscriber that haven't entered the platform in a month or two was that was their reason to come back to the platform. And understanding how important it is to keep the subscription money coming in is the key knowledge, I think, in a massive empowerment to the creator. But again, I think we're living in times where it's going to take us some time in order to get to make this data public or more standardized.
So it's a secret, because the platforms today, they have a big tension in the market. They are really there are too many. People complain they don't have enough budget to pay more than 3 platforms. In Poland, we measure more than 30% on Betaseries, on our first metrics. More than 30% of people having 3 platforms. Fan of series, people, of course, subscribing to platforms, not people not yet in platforms. In France, it's almost 40%. But there is a saturation. So the key for platforms is not to find a new customer, but it's to keep them, because if you find 2 new customers, but in the meantime you lose 3, is not a good business. So the key will be more and more about retention and about all these elements we were mentioning before, as you say. Yeah, and when we analyze a show, we define if this show is really for the DNA, the core audience of the platform, or is this show, maybe a show they are about to purchase or that is under development, is this a show that is not for their core audience, but that will bring new kind of people? So this kind of information can help to take decisions.
I feel like we could talk about this for the next couple of hours, but let's just bring it home. We're now in Łódź. We're attending PIKE conference. Yeah. So tell us what you know about what kind of insight into Polish consumption of content or preferences or behavior can you share with us?
Well, so we have today in Betaseries 6 million people in Europe coming every month, getting recommendations, and 3 million are members for free, but they share with us their viewing in exchange of recommendation alert notifications. So we got a lot of knowledge, and we have started with France, which is more than half of the members. But progressively, and with the lockdown, we have expanded a lot. So now the second country is Spain, Italy, Germany, and Poland is growing. We have, without having really done anything, we have more than 100,000 people coming every month regularly just to get some information, and we have not started the service yet. So there is a big demand, and when we ask them, so we made for PIKE events a specific polls on our Polish audience, and people tell us that they are very frustrated about finding new series. It's a big, as I said previously, it's a big concern for them. So I think that what we bring, the added value, fits with expectations in Poland, especially because you have a lot of platforms, people subscribe also a lot, and the young audience, like everywhere else, is completely on these new screens, on these new non-linear, viewing patterns. What we learn also from our Polish audience on Betaseries is that there is a big interest into discovering non-Polish, non-US shows in general. You mentioned dark, or Israeli shows, or British or Nordic noir. So people are very curious. They know they can learn from series. They know that it's not only entertainment, as I was saying. So there is a lot of curiosity. And good recommendation will open your eyes on new content and so on. So that's why we are here to discuss with existing local platforms, to connect them to Betaseries, and to in a way to open the markets to their content on this audience that has been educated initially by Netflix, and they did a great job. And now the market is opening on all these international, local SVOD platforms, and progressively with AVOD. In 10 years, we jumped from 2 platforms to, in Europe, hundreds, So we have to adapt all this industry to this, and that's why we are in Poland, because like anywhere else in Europe, you are living this revolution.
Well, listen, I wish you best of luck. I cannot wait to get more recommendations and more tailored offer to a Polish audience. My partner in this talk was Remi Tereszkiewicz, a CEO of Betaseries. Just one final thought from me is, if you have a chance to participate in panel, or if you would like to join the users of Betaseries and share your opinion and share your viewing habits, this is going to benefit all of us. Representation matters, and every voice should be heard. Every niche demand should be represented, whether on linear television or streaming platforms. So if you have a chance to participate and make your voice heard, just do it. And for the producers, creators, writers, actors, there is data available to you which can empower your position in the industry and can make this entire creative process a little bit better and a little less stressful. Thank you very much. My name is Pola Hempowicz. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.